The last problem on Chapter 10 review is we are looking at a sample of 8 jars, and we're wondering if this coffee, if they're filling it completely. So because we're looking at a sample of 8 jars, we can't assume a normal distribution. So notice what else was stated in the problem in the first sentence. The population has a normal distribution, and most things in manufacturing do. So we can proceed. Now we need to figure out what kind of test it is. So because it says a sample of 8 had the standard deviation, that is my sample standard deviation. So we must use a t-test. Now the difference is using a different table, and this is at the end of Chapter 10 instead of at the end of Chapter 6. So we are supposed to be filling the jars to 16 ounces, and if we're not filling them completely, we're filling them less than 16, so we're looking at this side. Now it's important you understand which direction the test is. This happens to be on the left-hand side too, so when we look things up in the table, we need to make sure that we're looking either to the right or to the left or two-sided. And so what happens here, we're looking at a t, or a test statistic, based on the degrees of freedom, which is n minus 1, which is 8 minus 1, or 7. So to find the test statistic, it's essentially the same as finding your z-score. Where are you? Where's your evidence based on what you were supposed to get, divided by how spread the curve happens to be, and here it's based on the standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size. Same formula, just a different standard deviation used. So when you simplify this, you notice that you are below when you divide this out, and you get negative 3.77 as your test statistic. It is not your p-value. In order to find your p-value, you must use the table at the end of Chapter 10. And what you do in that table is you're actually looking across 7 degrees of standard, or 7 degrees of freedom across to find this number. Where is that number approximately going to be at? Well, it's pretty small, and that table doesn't do a great job because you have to estimate it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you on the calculator. In the table, they're going to give you a range of places, a range of p-value that you will compare. On the calculator, it will give you the exact. Again, I was supposed to have 16, and the average that I got was 15.6. My sample standard deviation for the problem was 3/10, and I was only looking at 8. And again, I had the same direction of the test. So my p-value here is 0.003. So my p-value is 0.003. 0.003 is very small, less than 1%. So when I compare at the alpha level, which is 10%, this p-value is less than. So at the 10% level, we're going to reject. And we are going to reject the null. So if this is 10%, this is always bigger, so I would accept. This side is always smaller, so I would reject. That falls way down in this rejection region. So we're going to reject the null. So why would we do that? There is enough evidence to suggest that the jars are not being filled completely. Now we could have made a mistake, and that's based on our alpha level at the 10%. But once again, a couple things you need to make sure that you're gathering from when you read this about normal distribution and what kind of test. And then you need to be able to use your tables. One thing you have to realize is if my test said that we were looking for greater than, you need to understand that if this was my alternative, greater than is on this side. So when I look at my table gives me this region. So to find this, I need to subtract from 1. And this was similar to the homework problems, practice problems out of Chapter 10. So make sure you're checking the direction of the test, the type of test based on the standard deviation that you know, And then, once you know the direction, do you double the p-value or not?